Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. It's Monday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Of course, we're going to talk about the politics of this past weekend. How can we not? I know it's Monday night, and the South Carolina primary was 2 days ago now, but I haven't been on the air, so I have to talk about it. Maybe I can offer something new to what you've all heard so far. As for me, this weekend, I got something very interesting in the mail this weekend. Very excited about it. I think I mentioned that I had ordered it last week. As you know, I'm a new gun owner. You can go to YouTube and find my discussion about me going from a non-gun owner to being a Glock 19 owner now. And I've gotten some magazines for it. I have two 17-round magazines, two 15-round magazines. And now on Saturday, I got a 31-round magazine. Of course, haven't had a chance to try it out yet, but it is spectacular. I can't wait to go to the range and try this out. It is a real Glock magazine. It's not one of these knockoffs or counterfeit ones that you can see online. And so the reason I say that is because those knockoffs have a reputation of not being able to feed the gun very well. They usually go cheap on the spring that goes inside the magazine. But this is a real Glock magazine. And putting in, Glock is one of the few manufacturers in the world that makes these long, these big magazines for their regular handguns that people can own. I'm not saying there aren't some other guns out there that you can do that with, but Glock is one of the few that you get a regular Glock 19 9mm that anybody in the United States can buy, as long as you're in particular states. You can get a magazine for it that holds 31, 33 bullets. Cartridges, I should say. Unless, once again, you live in a few particular states. In Florida, just about anything goes down here, so I couldn't pass it up. Once I found out that I had a gun where you could get a 31 round, there's also a 33 round magazine that you can get, but those are hard to find. They're like on back order, so I got the 31 round one. You got to get one just for the pure novelty of it, and especially when it's only what mine cost with shipping. I think it was $45. You can't pass that up. Just to say I have it. So I took a picture of it, put it up on my Facebook site. So I hope later this week, maybe Friday, maybe I'll get to the range and try that out and use it with all my other magazines. But it's just very, very interesting. Just a unique kind of situation. And I'm going to take full advantage of it. Not good for concealed carry, but good on the range, and I suppose eventually when I do get my concealed carry license, which won't be till this summer after I go March 8th to get the paperwork done, I'll be able to carry that magazine around with me in my car. You never know. Hey, look at the news this weekend. An Uber driver, while he's picking people up, is going around killing people in Michigan. Just never know what can happen. I think that these days most people are getting guns. We know that Barack Obama has been the greatest salesman in the world regarding guns. And I think a lot of people are buying them because of what they've seen in Paris. That was my reason. What people have seen in San Bernardino. And they visualize, well, you know what? What if I go to an office party and something happens? I want to be prepared. But probably more within the realm of possibility is something like, once again, what happened in Michigan, which wasn't terrorism at all. It's just a guy who's, I guess, lost his mind. And as far as they can tell, had no criminal record except for the only thing he had were some driving tickets. So they're going to get to the bottom of why he did that, but you just never know. You just never know, and I think that's maybe another. People are buying them guns for terrorist reasons, and it's more likely in the end they'll probably end up using them to stop a robbery, to stop the murder of someone else, something like that, or themselves, and it won't have anything to do with terrorism. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I think it's all awesome. I wish every person in the United States could have a gun like mine, have a 31-round magazine attached to it, just being ready for those bad guys if they show up. That's awesome to me. We know to liberals it's not. So, but I got that this weekend, and I got here really fast too, which was nice. So let's get to the politics. I remind you, you can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Dentzel domain, all one word, no space in between. South Carolina. My personal opinion is I don't know how realistically it could have gone any worse this weekend. I really can't realistically. Like you could say, well, Cruz and Rubio, they could have only gotten 1%. That's not realistic. What I'm saying is that the polls pretty much got it right. For the most part, Trump ran away with it. Cruz, with all his great ground game, I guess, couldn't even get second place. It was close. He and Rubio, real close. Rubio spent a lot more money there. He got more endorsements there. We know Ted Cruz these days doesn't get many endorsements. He's gotten a few, but he didn't get Tim Scott, senator from South Carolina's endorsement. He didn't get Nikki Haley's endorsement, the governor of South Carolina, and both of those two went to Marco Rubio. So maybe given all that, Ted Cruz did fine, but given that we're told how great his ground game is, I would think that would overrun a couple political endorsements, especially since we're allegedly in a season where incumbents and endorsements and being connected to the political machine isn't seen as being a good thing, thus Donald Trump. So it's hard to kind of decipher all of that. There is a huge anti-government, anti-politician movement out there, but it seems that there is still enough of the traditional thinking out there that allowed Marco Rubio to come in second place, even if it was by just 1,000 votes. It's still second place. Of course, Jeb Bush dropped out, and we can talk about that in a second. But what I would start asking, and Ben Carson, John Kasich, they got down in single digits, 7-8%, and John Kasich has already come out and said, these people are crazy saying that I should drop out, and Ben Carson's going to continue on. If you listen to or you read people at redstate.com, the other Red State, or you go to the Ace of Spades, a conservative blog, they'll tell you that Ben Carson is running nothing but a mailing campaign. He's just trying to get people's emails so he can publicize his books and everything else. So he's not going anywhere. John Kasich is not going anywhere. Jeb Bush dropped out. But what I would seriously start asking Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. Now, they have no reason to listen to me, even though I'm more conservative than both of them. When they start sniping at each other and yelling at each other and arguing, whether it's through their campaigns or up on stage for the next debate, whenever that is, they should be thinking to themselves, is Donald Trump enjoying this? And if the answer is yes, they shouldn't be doing it. That's what it's now. That's where we are now. I know it's what do they call it? The prisoner's dilemma? Something like that. Where neither one of them wants to drop out because each of them thinks he can beat the other. Cruz thinks he can beat Rubio. Rubio thinks he can beat Cruz. So they both have reasons to stay in. But in the end, by doing this, they're both going to lose. More importantly, we're going to lose. We're going to. John Kasich and Ben Carson have no shot at coming in second or third place, or first, second, or third place in any state I think from now on. I know John Kasich, I think, is holding out for Michigan, which is somewhere down the line, and I guess the primary season eventually gets to Ohio. I don't know where that is. Maybe he's thinking I could come in first or second in one of those. But otherwise, he has no realistic shot of coming in first, second, or third anywhere. And Ben Carson has no realistic shot of coming in first, second, or third anywhere either. So there's a fair amount of criticism that can be thrown at them, but Cruz and Rubio, their campaigns, if they're so concerned about the country, if they're so concerned about if they really believe what they've said about Donald Trump, then it's time to make a deal. And it's time to put their egos aside. It just is. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who are Cruz supporters that say we'll never support Rubio, whether it's because of immigration or just him calling Cruz a liar and all of that. And I know there are a bunch of Rubio supporters. Hey, you know what I'm saying. It goes both ways. There are hardcore people on each side that claim they won't vote for the other. Well, it's time to find out if that's true. If that's true, then this is all a waste of time anyway. Then this is all a waste of time. We should just let Donald Trump win out, not give him a hard time so he doesn't say anything stupid, although he's going to anyway. You might as well just play it that way and just back off of him if you two can't come to an agreement. I wrote something this weekend to a friend of mine telling him, at this point, this is what I think should be done. I know it'd never be done, but this is about as equitable a way I can figure this all out. Cruz, Rubio, Kasich, Carson all get together in a room. Here's what we're going to do. Our primary starts now between Nevada, Super Tuesday, the SEC primary, whatever, all that is combined, how many states that is, how many votes, whatever it is. We are going to start now, and whoever gets the most votes between now and the end of that is going to stay in. The rest of you three are going to drop out. However, he who gets second place gets to be my vice president. Whoever stays in gets to be my vice president nominee. And you other two will get cabinet level positions. Ben Carson, you want to be attorney or surgeon general? You got it. Or health and human services, something like that. Something that goes along with your resume, your experience. Have at it. And write all the books you want. John Kasich, you want to being that you have budget experience, going back to your days in the House, you want to be Treasury Secretary. I know you're not that conservative compared to who I am, whether it's Rubio or Cruz, because I think either one of those would win that kind of contest. Then, that's what we'll do. All right? At least for one term and until maybe you don't want to do the job anymore. Because all of us put together are better than Donald Trump is. That's what I would do. You keep it as fair as possible. These are the states that are coming up. You're choosing to stay in. Good for you. But we want you to know you're going to have to start producing some voters. If not, we ask that you drop out. But you'll get something for going along with this. And then maybe 4 years from now, if I don't do a good job, 8 years, then maybe one of you will have a shot at winning the presidency. Because right now, none of us have a shot. None. But getting back to Cruz and Rubio, they've definitely, I think, the campaigns and the men themselves, as much as I support them, I think they've lost the forest for the trees. Can't see the forest for the trees. They're going to beat each other to death. They're going to do it. They're going to use a lot of money doing it. They could turn some people off. I guess that's possible. In the meantime, Donald Trump is going to be racking up these delegates, and I know that we're only 5% in, but I just have a question. How long are these two going to go at it? Marco Rubio is going to be getting a lot of money. He's going to be getting support from the quote-unquote establishment people. He's going to be continuing to get endorsements, so he's not going anywhere. That money is going to continue to roll into him. Likewise, Ted Cruz, little more grassroots. He's not going to get as many endorsements, but a lot of regular people are going to be spending money on sending him money. He has his framework. He's not going anywhere. So they're two of them. They're not going anywhere. This isn't like Jeb Bush, who dropped out this weekend, who was spending money, not winning anything. Spending money like his campaign like a drunken sailor, to use a horrible cliche. To underperform as much as he did. And I will admit, though, that I was wrong. What I never, I guess, anticipated, I guess I have to think about this we're going to mention Jeb Bush, and I want to talk about him by himself in a little bit. But going back to like November, I really thought that he'd stick it out through Super Tuesday. However, when you start seeing that he can't, that was all predicated on the money, the spending of the money. And frankly, his campaign and those PACs and super PACs that were supporting him spent too much money early. They should have seen the writing on the wall, for example, in New Hampshire. They should have seen the writing on the wall in Iowa. They should have contested there, but the amount of money that was spent in those two states and then going to South Carolina was embarrassing. Embarrassing given the results. That's something that I didn't anticipate. I thought that Jeb Bush would kind of let it cool off, knowing that he had a bunch of money, a lot of supporters. He was going to get endorsements. Let those other guys beat each other up. Chris Christie, Rand Paul, Carson, Cruz, Kasich, Rubio, beat themselves up, spending all this money beating each other up. And then Jeb Bush would then come in later. Like maybe South Carolina was where he'd seriously start getting into it. Nevada, setting him up for the South. Didn't do that. Did something different, and he paid for it. Not all Jeb Bush's fault regarding that, but he is the candidate, so he does have to take some of the blame. But now that he's gone, these other guys, John Kasich, Carson, who knows how long they're going to be able to go. But in the meantime, they're going to be detracting from these other guys. But most importantly, once again, getting back to Cruz and Rubio, they have to start figuring out, are we going to be happy just each of us getting 20% from here to the end of time? Rubio gets 20% in Nevada. Cruz gets 20% in Nevada. They go down to Georgia, Florida. They each get 20, and Donald Trump continues to get between 30 and 35%. Last time I checked, 35% is still bigger than 20%. So how does Ted Cruz, for example, how does he imagine Marco Rubio is going to get out of the race if Marco Rubio continues to get about the same amount of votes that Ted Cruz does? And Marco Rubio, how does he intend to stay in the race when Ted Cruz is going to continue to get about the same amount of votes as he does? I don't know how you even begin to think about that. And they have to know that. They have to know that. This is what's a good example? Maybe like a football team. You have two wide receivers who are great. Maybe going back to the 1970s with my Pittsburgh Steelers with Stallworth and Swan. Okay? There's only one football. And not to mention, they had Franco Harris, who is a Hall of Fame running back. There's only one football on the field. And they have to realize that to win, they can't get thrown the ball all the time. Stallworth is not going to get thrown every pass. Swan wasn't going to get thrown every pass. Franco Harris wasn't going to run the ball every play. And they had another nice running back, Rocky Blyer, who wasn't too bad either. They all had to eventually say, you know what? We're part of a team. we're going to just be happy with what we get. And you know what? That ends up winning Super Bowls. Maybe like the new Steelers, the 2015-2016 version. You got Antonio Brown, you got Martavis Bryant, you got Marcus Wheaton. You had Heath Miller until he retired this weekend. All capable receivers, excellent players. But the only way the Steelers win is if they know their place. That they can't get the ball every play. Can't do it. Just seems to me like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio have put themselves in a place where they do want the ball every play. And what's the most important thing about being a team? It's not about you. It's about the team. In the United States case, it's about the American people. It's not about Ted Cruz. It's not about Marco Rubio. And dare I say it, that's one of the big problems we have in politics all over the place. The politicians do think it's about them. It's not. It's not. In fact, this is the biggest problem I've had with Barack Obama, and this is the hugest problem I had with with Donald Trump. Is that it's all about Donald Trump. And that's the way it's always been. And he's so obvious about it. And people think that that's somehow going to change. But you can't control. Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz are going to have to understand they can't control him. Donald Trump is going to do what he's going to do. They can only control their own behavior, their own decisions they make every day. And that decision may be getting the rest of those guys together and saying, if Donald Trump gets this nomination, we are all screwed. And not just politically. Ted Cruz will be fine. He'll go back to the Senate. He'll get reelected in Texas. From now to the end of time, no big deal. Marco Rubio, that might be a little dicier here in Florida. Hard to say. John Kasich in Ohio, not going anywhere. Carson, not a politician, can easily go back to being a doctor. No big deal. But the American people are going to suffer. All of them will figure out ways on which to prosper. The American people are going to suffer with Donald Trump as president. Their party is going to suffer. Each one of them individually probably will be fine. Even Marco Rubio doesn't want to be senator from Florida anymore. He can go on a speaking tour. He can probably do about anything that he wants now with his life. And probably, he's my age, he can stay away from the presidency and politics for 15 years and jump back in whenever he wants. When he's like 60, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. But the American people are going to get screwed. Likewise, this goes back to my idea. I don't mind losing. I mind losing if I'm losing it and I'm not using my principles. That's what I won't mind if Ted Cruz wins the nomination or Marco Rubio wins the nomination and then loses to Hillary Clinton. Way it goes. I know it sucks, but at least to me as a conservative, I'm somewhat losing on principle. With Donald Trump, not losing on principle because he doesn't have any principles. He doesn't have any. And I don't like losing that way. All right? Even though I don't even know if Donald Trump's on my side. I'm still not convinced of that. He's more Democrat than anything else. So it could be two Democrats running come November. I mean, I guess for a political scientist, this is all just simply fascinating. It's going to generate a lot of books, a lot of articles. Obviously, for this show, gives me a lot to talk about. But the American people are going to get screwed. And I just bang that away with Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. What is your plan to knock the other guy out of the race? I would say that plan isn't very solid. And if you're saying, well, we can knock him out by June it's too late. It's too late. So that's what I would do. As for Jeb Bush, the truth was he never had a chance. I know that a lot of Jeb Bush people are going to say, well, it's Donald Trump and he just sucked the life out of everything. It's not that. It's not that. I think it's safe to say that here's what we know. Let's put it this way. Here's what we know we discovered between Iowa and now. Donald Trump supporters are not Jeb Bush supporters. Donald Trump voters are not Jeb Bush voters. In fact, of all particular clashes and contrasts and comparisons between supporters of all these different people running, the Bush people supporters and the Donald Trump supporters are probably the most unalike. So you can't say that Donald Trump stole Jeb Bush votes. He didn't. He might have sucked the life out of all the marketing and media and everything, but as far as voting actually goes, I just don't buy into that for a second. Even though I would say that Donald Trump and Jeb Bush are part of what generally is accepted as the establishment. I know a lot of people don't feel that about Donald Trump. I personally do. Most people think that about Jeb Bush, and I think it's true. But still, despite them both being in that particular kind of same position, the kind of supporter that they have is different. All right, so that wasn't what did Jeb Bush in. The problem with Jeb Bush, saying for months, it's just his last name. If he was Jeb Brown, Jeb Smith, Jeb Clark, Jeb Adams, I don't know how well he would have done in this. I don't know if he would have done any better or any worse, but he certainly would have had a better chance going in. Just on that alone. That thinking about the Bush years, the George W. Bush years, and how those last couple years kind of in some ways gave us Barack Obama. Going back to Bush 41, him only running for one term, losing to Bill Clinton. Of course, Ross Perot had at least a little bit to do with that. It just doesn't bring back a lot of good political memories overall. When I say political memories, I mean votes and policy and whether it was conservative or not and all of that. It just doesn't bring back a lot of good memories, even though Bush 41 and George W. Bush, I think, are good men. Jeb Bush, good guy. Wrong last name. Then you combine that with some of his policies, maybe his attitude toward illegal immigration, policy toward Common Core. As a Florida resident, even though I wasn't here when he was governor, I think that his performance as governor here was a little overstated. Certainly was easy to be governor of Florida between 2000 and 2006. It was easy to be governor anywhere at that time because we had a boom going on. Of course, it crashed after Jeb Bush left office. Anybody could have been governor of Florida at that time, and Florida would have done just fine. Because you know why? People want to live here. People want to move here. No great weather, no income tax. The third most populous state for a reason. So I think that there was that never quite rang true with a lot of people. Maybe people thinking like I did, well, I was governor of Florida, big deal. We see what the governor of Texas tried to do. Rick Perry, he didn't go anywhere either. And then on top of that, his campaign we now can see, made a lot of bad choices. That's something I mentioned before. But I got to go to the break. I want to continue to mention, keep this as a topic after the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Talk radio the way the founding fathers would have done it.
I'm just a man trying to make his mark on history.
Red State Talk Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit with the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed. Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at nemoarms.com.
Less than 2% of America's population volunteers to defend our nation. Though we rarely see them, we live the benefits of these heroes' sacrifices in the freedom we know and the safety we feel. Each and every day, the Gary Sinise Foundation serves our nation by honoring our defenders, veterans, first responders, and their families. We do this by creating and supporting unique programs designed to entertain, educate, inspire, strengthen, and build communities. The Gary Sinise Foundation has grown because the need has never been greater. Together, we'll improve the lives of thousands of American heroes and their families day in, day out, all year long. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, our veterans, our first responders, and the families who stand by them, we can always do a little more. Join us. Visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
Hi, I'm Gil Fulbright. The people who run my campaign, they've made this commercial, and I'm in it. This campaign, it's not about me. It's about crafting a version of me that'll appeal to you. A version that visits random work sites with paid actors pointing at things. A version of me that doesn't find old people loathsome or pointless. Has a conventionally attractive yet curiously still family. Listening to my constituents, legislating, these are things I don't do. What I do is spend about 70% of my time raising funds for re-election. I'd do anything to stay in office. My name's Gil Fulbright, but hell, I'll change my name to Phil Goldbright, or Bill Fulbright, or fill up my mouth with farts. These are the things that are important to me. And these are the fine people that finance my campaign. Now, in order to do these things, I have to stay in office. And to stay in office, I have to keep these guys happy. Now, if any of these things make these guys unhappy, well, my hands are tied. So come November, the choice is clear. You want another spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? Or a spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? I'm Philip a Mouth with Farts, and I approve this message.
And we're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk a little bit about Jeb Bush. Really, of course, his name comes up. But really have not devoted a lot of time to his campaign, but because it wasn't really a factor. But I thought that he left the race this weekend with a lot of grace. And there's no doubt, and there's never been any doubt in my mind that he's a good guy. But I, as I said, could never vote for him because a lot of the reasons that I mentioned before the break. He has to be really wondering what Mike Murphy was thinking. Mike Murphy was running a super PAC, Right to Rise, probably the biggest super PAC out there, at least on the Republican side as far as raising money. I read somewhere that Mike Murphy is going to make $14 million off of the money that he raised for Jeb Bush. Good for him. Good work if you can get it. But being what the laws are, the PACs can't coordinate with the campaign and all that. Jeb Bush had, if they did follow the law to the letter, Jeb Bush has to be thinking, what was that guy thinking? Because it was a lot of that PAC money that went into New Hampshire, for example, that ended up making Jeb Bush look like an idiot. He got all those votes, and he spent, $15,000 a vote or something like that. Or $1,500 a vote or whatever. It was some crazy, crazy number. Well, that's not necessarily Jeb Bush's fault. It's not Jeb Bush writing all the checks. But it was those super PACs, including Mike Murphy, that allowed that statistic to become a fact and for it to be well known. And the other candidates, especially Donald Trump, got a lot of traction out of that. Not all Jeb Bush's fault. So there was some collateral damage. Jeb Bush's campaign, I think, got its fair amount of collateral damage because of that. I think he was damaged more by his own PACs than any other guy was or any candidate was. You got to throw Carly Fiorina in there. So it's just just a lot of things put together. It's not just, I think mainly he was a Bush. I don't think it was necessarily Common Core, illegal immigration, or even necessarily the super PACs. It was all put together, and I think just the main part of that, 50% of it at least, was him just being a Bush, and people are over it. People are over it. Now, what's he going to do now? I guess that he can continue to criticize Donald Trump and come to the defense. Jeb can come to the defense of George W., and that's perfectly laudable. Just when he was getting good at it, or he's probably thinking, I just had that debate, and I was just getting good at attacking Donald Trump, and then I have to drop out. Dang. He did give the other guys a way to do it if they choose to do so. We'll see if they do. So what else is there more to say about him? I just don't see him. Will we ever be over the Bushes? Probably sometime. Probably. 20 years from now, but then Jeb Bush, I think, will be a little too old to run for president. So I think this was his chance. Little did I know, as I stated last week, I was all afraid that people were going to accept a Bush again just because Barack Obama, they would say anything other than Barack Obama. And I had, a year ago, I was thinking, hopefully that doesn't mean that they'll easily take on another Bush as the nominee. Little did I know that I didn't have that much to worry about, and that somebody even worse would swoop in and take over everything, and that, of course, being Donald Trump. Now, let's move to Donald Trump. I ran this analogy by a friend of mine this past week and typed it out. It ended up being a lot longer than I wanted it to be. But the current situation we have, not on the Republican side, but on the Republican side, but in the relation between Donald Trump and those people running the party and those people, those candidates, politicians, pundits who are loosely labeled the establishment, and you know how much I hate that term because it can mean anything to anybody at any time. I thought of the movie Scent of a Woman. Seen that movie with Al Pacino? You should see it. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry that you're just not going to understand this part of the show tonight. Chris O'Donnell, student at an exclusive school, gets in some trouble, not all his fault, but the administration of this very elite school wants to peg this accident that happened, they damaged somebody's car. They damaged the president's car doing this trick. And Chris O'Donnell, being a regular kid at this exclusive school, gets wrapped up in it. And in the end, it looks like he's going to have to take all the blame for it simply because one of the other kids involved, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, that just shows you how long ago the movie was, has connections within the school, and he's going to get off with just a slap on the wrist. Well, Al Pacino comes in, who has gotten to know Chris O'Donnell over the course of the movie, to defend Chris O'Donnell's character. Al Pacino plays Al Pacino. What we know as Al Pacino now. Loud, brash, swearing, everything else. And in the end of the day, he makes the administration of this school look stupid and saves the day for Chris O'Donnell. Chris O'Donnell is totally proven innocent. He gets to stay at the school. Everything's going to be fine. And Al Pacino is this hero. And for that one instance in Al Pacino's life, he does the right thing, because you learn throughout the movie that, you know what, he's not really that good of a guy. However, Chris O'Donnell, during the course of the movie, helps Al Pacino with something, some deep, seated problem that Al Pacino has. And so Al Pacino feels like he has to come to the defense of Chris O'Donnell, and does it in a great way. But here's the problem. Even though Al Pacino shows up this very elite administration in this movie, that doesn't mean that Al Pacino can run the school. Now, you should know when Al Pacino makes this big speech at the end, all the kids sitting out in this auditorium all clap for him and everything, and they just love what he's saying. Bunch of kids, bunch of 15-year-old boys. Just love what he's saying. They're going there. Their parents are spending a lot of money. Well, I tell you, they're going to the school, so they'll have a leg up in life. They'll get to go to Harvard or Yale or wherever else, make all this money and everything. Well, what those kids don't understand is if you were then to extrapolate and say, well, because Al Pacino showed up this administration, and he seems to have better morals than the administration that was trying to pin this crime on Chris O'Donnell, who was innocent. If those kids were to say that and put Al Pacino in charge of the school would have gone into the gutter in a few years. And all that money that their parents spent would have been in that gutter as well. You would have made a mistake to think, if you just looked at that scene from the movie, that Al Pacino could run the school better than this administration did or had been, even though the administration in this particular case was making a big mistake. How do you know that? Just have to look at who the kind of guy Al Pacino was before that scene. Life was kind of a mess. He was blind. He's hanging out with strippers in New York City. He was thinking about committing suicide. All of this. But if you just see that scene, you could believe it. Well, that's kind of, I feel, like what's going on in the United States or on the Republican side with Donald Trump and him opposing those in the Republican Party. Donald Trump is Al Pacino in that movie. He's come out, he's taken a couple stands on a couple of important issues. Who knows for what reason? But if you just take a snapshot, and I think that that's why a lot of people, they're just taking a snapshot of Donald Trump now, within the last 6 months to a year. Maybe they know about his reality show. But just because he can seem moral in a couple of these arguments, arguing about illegal immigration with China. I don't agree with him on China, but some people do. They think that China's ripping us off because he's taking these positions, that he would actually be better leader than other people who have shown to have more success, not perfect, but better success leading people. That's a mistake. That's what I don't think his supporters see. They don't understand that just because Donald Trump seems to be showing up some Republican leadership right now does not mean that Donald Trump can lead the country better. And that's it's a difficult concept to understand. Because had they extrapolated that out once again to go to part 2 of Scent of a Woman, where Al Pacino, because of what he does, gets to be the leader of that school, I know where that school would have been. It would have gone into the gutter. All those kids who were clapping for Al Pacino a couple years after that would be getting the hell out, going somewhere else, because the status of that school would have dropped. Because the status of the school would be directly connected to who leads it. And that would be Al Pacino, a guy who really had not a lot of character until that part in the movie. And see, this is what I see going on. Those people who are supporting Donald Trump, thinking he's so good, making fun of people who have been running the Republican Party, making fun of Jeb Bush, making fun of the Bushes, all of them, making fun of senators, of governors, and all these people. Whereas he has had as many mistakes in his life as any of those people, if not more. Those people are now supporting him. My feeling is they'd be like those kids in the movie. If Al Pacino was the head of the school, the kids leave, and they'd act like they never clapped for him once. This is what's going to go on with Donald Trump. This is going to, and it's going to be different than with Barack Obama. The difference with Barack Obama, with his supporters, is that he ran, and everybody knew he was liberal. All right? Everybody knew that. And he's done many liberal things while he's been president. He hasn't been liberal enough for some people, but for most Democrats, he's been pretty liberal. And that's why he still gets a lot of support. With Donald Trump, what is his coalition? It varies from day to day. I know his support, are his ideas? His supporters don't waver, but what he says definitely does. And nobody wants to be attached to a loser. And that's what Donald Trump is going to be as president, because he has no principles. That's the difference between him and Barack Obama. Barack Obama does have principles. They're liberal principles. He does have values. They're liberal values, and they're all horrible. Donald Trump has no principles, no values. He'll say anything at any time. Who knows if he believes it or not? And you know what? When you do that, eventually people do get sick of it, because when you have a lack of values, a lack of principles, you don't get anywhere. You don't get anywhere. And these people will dump him. And what they'll do is they'll dump him and be like, no, I didn't support him. They'll all lead us into this knowing that the man has no values, no principles. And then afterwards say, nope, I didn't support him. I didn't vote for him, like Dennis Miller likes to say about Barack Obama. Hey, don't look at me. I didn't vote for him. You know, at least Barack Obama's supporters can say, yeah, we voted for him. He's liberal. We're liberal. He's Barack with Obamacare and what he wants to do with amnesty and what he's trying to do with guns and what he's trying to do with the environment. Yeah. What are Donald Trump supporters going to latch on to if he becomes president? Hard to say. And that's why I think that once, if he were to become president and things go bad, they'll be running for the exits. Be no different than somebody gets caught up in Jim Jones and then goes down to South America and then escaped, didn't commit suicide like all those followers did, come back to the United States. I don't even know who Jim Jones is. Oh, no, that wasn't me. You heard I was... Oh, that wasn't me. There was just something about Son of a Woman. Once again, if you haven't seen the movie, it's a little maybe hard to understand. But if you've seen the movie, then you know what I'm talking about. Despite Al Pacino winning out in the end, you would not want him to run that school. No matter how right he was. This is the point I'm trying to make about Donald Trump. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump is right. What I'm saying is he's loud, he's brash, he dropped F-bombs? I don't know. But, he's very un-PC. And somehow that translates into good leadership. So, or it may be that, at least in the movie and in real life, the people who have been leading, maybe they're just doing the best they can. And that is an argument I've been trying to make for a while that I know a lot of conservatives don't want to hear. This goes back to The Senate, the House, how conservative are they? Not very. Not very. But this leads me to then my other topic about how too many conservative leaders have misled all of you about what is possible. In fact, the saying, adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. I saw that at the gym last night. And of course, it's a horrible cliche by this time. But you certainly can say that the adversity that the Republican Party has had with the last 8 months has certainly revealed a lot. Hasn't it? It certainly has. It's revealed, and once you notice what this adversity has revealed, it's no wonder then that so many people have gotten behind Donald Trump. I'm still under the belief that these open primaries, I think a lot of Democrats are crossing over and voting for him, and I talked about that with a friend this weekend. I think there's a lot of that, but there are a lot of good Republicans who voted for Mitt Romney in 2012 all enthusiastically who are probably voting for Donald Trump now. Who were for Newt Gingrich, now voting for Donald Trump. Who voted for Rick Santorum, now voting for Donald Trump. Now, how you make those conversions, I have no idea. But it just, what shows, and this adversity, what it showed, all this back and forth, and all these debates, and making fun of each other, is that these conservative media leaders, and you can start with Rush and work your way down, they've not done as good a job as we've all thought. First of all, that's what it reveals. And secondly, when adversity does come upon them, what do? They default to what's going to make them the most money. And you know what that is? Getting behind Donald Trump, saying some nice things about him. Why? Because Donald Trump has a rabid following. He's not conservative. He's a kook. But they'll continue to support him because it gets people talking. And it's a good way to sell gold and iced tea and fancy beds. That's what this adversity has revealed. And when you see that, then you can think back to the last 20 years and you think, how is it that some of these conservatives could ever latch on to Donald Trump? Well, now you know. Because now we're finding out that what we've been listening to and what we've been watching has been at least a little bit of a fraud. Fraud. Yes, I said it. A fraud. We thought that a lot of people were getting educated in good conservatism. They haven't been. They've been listening. They've been listening and watching entertainment. And so when the adversity starts, they go along with the guy who isn't conservative. How that can happen? It can only happen if people don't understand what's going on. And that starts with people who have been allegedly trying to teach conservatism for the last 25 years. Yes, this adversity that we've been through, it's certainly exposed everybody's scars, hasn't it? The Ann Coulters, Laura Ingrams, ditching their conservatism, alleged conservatism, in seconds for a guy who's a kook. And they'll make excuses for him all over the place. Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, all alleged conservatives making excuses for this guy. And you know why I think they do that. I think that gets back to them being made fun of by the mainstream media, and they see Donald Trump as a way to get back. He's their weapon to get back at the mainstream media for all these years. That's what I believe. And we're going to be the collateral damage of that. We've been misled. I'm going to keep saying it, but I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. edwarddentzel.com/book is where you can download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. Podbean, Podomatic, YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find me in all those places. Twitter feed, Dentzel Domain. Email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.